Welcome to the Nonprofits and Media Podcast, where we talk to leaders involved with media inside a variety of nonprofit organizations about the different ways they approach marketing and communications. I'm Nathan Pfaff, and my job is to tease out what benefits or results they've seen in their content strategy so that you can apply those to your own life or organization. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Nonprofits and Media. Jessica and James Brewer are founders of Brewer Creative Production Company and are a husband and wife team that work for Iris Global. Originally from Australia, they joined Iris as media missionaries, and a few years later joined staff on the Iris media team. They spent a few years in Mozambique, the poorest country in the world, where they filmed a feature documentary called Nifento about the organization's response and impact during a time of terrorism, chaos, and torture of the innocent. Following their time in Mozambique, the Brewers now live stateside, where they help oversee some of Iris's other media projects, such as a documentary series on each of their international bases and a podcast with the organization's CEO. In this episode, we got to ask them questions about the film, their start in media, and their experience and advice about learning as you go. Don't miss it. Take a listen. Awesome. Well, James and Jessica, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, we're excited to be here.
Awesome. So you guys have been doing media for Iris Global, your organization, and you guys have done a lot of shorter videos and things like that. But then you also ended up doing this feature-length documentary called Nifento. And so I wanted to ask how that process got started. What made you guys want to take some of the short videos you were capturing and turn it into a much larger project?
Yes, I think for us, it was definitely a passion job at first. We were living in Mozambique in the middle of a war zone, and we were with COVID. It was 2020, and we could see all the need around us, and we were kind of driven by this place of like, okay, well, we're here. What can we do to help? And the conflict was just continuing to grow, really. And so from that, we were like, okay, well, we've got these skills, we can film. We've done a lot of short films up to this point, small awareness campaigns, things just to bring awareness to our organization. But can we do something to really bring awareness and give a voice to these people here in Mozambique that's a little bit longer form? So we actually didn't have a budget. We didn't have a crew. I was pregnant at the time. We had a 2-year-old with us, and it was just me and my husband in the war zone with our team, and with all these restrictions of COVID.
A lot of logistical things, COVID, and then also we couldn't even drive. We had to organise lifts because they'd shut the offices because of COVID. Government and buildings were shut down, so we couldn't get our license there. There was a lot of funny,
lots of little things that kind of looked like in the practical, this is not really worth putting the energy and effort into. But as I would say to my husband, I can be very stubborn, and I was just very much so, we have to do something. So we negotiated, and I said to him, how about we try just a 15-minute short film? And then that...
And you and Heidi talked as well.
Yeah, and me and our founder, Heidi Baker, we had discussions, and I shared with her my concepts and ideas. And as soon as I got the green light from her and permission to run, she released creative freedom for us to be able to try to accomplish this task. And it just grew and grew and grew into the film. So yeah, it was a process, but we got there in the end.
Yeah.
So did you pitch to Heidi the 15-minute version, or how did it grow from 15 minutes into the feature length that it ended up becoming?
I think that I didn't have to so much pitch to Heidi. I had to more pitch to my husband, because when it comes to us working together as a team, I do a lot of the directing and the filming, the script writing, the skeleton of the film. And James, although I can do basic edits, James is the one who will be coming in and doing the audio, the soundtracks, and doing all of the actual post-production side of things. So he was thinking about just the scale of work that he would have to do being just a team of 2. And I was just thinking about the creative aspect of getting the voice and the word out there. So as Heidi, she was very passionate and has always been passionate about using media to be a voice and to advocate for people who are voiceless. So she was more on the lines of, okay, if you can create something, go for it.
Yeah,
and
shoot for the stars.
Shoot for the stars. She's a very empowering leader in that aspect when it comes to vision, and she's a big dreamer, so that was helpful. So we came across from this project not really a traditional way. We didn't really approach it with, a written concept and proposing it to our leaders. It was more of like, we're in the middle of this mess. We need to act. We need to do something. Let's do the best what we can do with what we have, which resulted in the film.
Yeah. Nice. It seems like it was more convincing yourselves than it was like anyone else in the department that what needed to.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So then you did this film and you released it, and you ended up making a separate website for us for it. And I wanted you to like talk a little bit about that and the decision making in that, and having a separate platform for the film as opposed to possibly just putting it onto your organization's website or social channels or things like that.
Yeah. So our current website's quite large and hosts a range of different things for us, like schools, places where people can support missionaries. There's lots of information. So sometimes it's a little hard to find exactly what you're looking for. We also wanted to get that name out there. That's quite unique and different. It's means love in the language of Northern Mozambique there. So we wanted a standalone domain. So, and my background is in web design too, so I knew like the value of doing that.
Nice. I wasn't sure if that was you or if that was someone else on your team.
No, so the website, everything, but all is to the two of us. So
amazing.
So our background was we both did graphic design very early on as high school students, and then rather than college in Australia, a lot of people get into the industry through like tradeways and
apprenticeships. Yeah.
So we both did that and graduated very early on. So before we became missionaries, we had a background in working in studios and doing web design, and so we understood a lot of like the release strategy,
commercials and different things.
I was in a band in the past where we'd had to do release strategy for an album or singles, so we kind of had a bit of a grid for this stuff, but it was all new again. But we knew like a standalone website was great, and we ended up just using Squarespace because it's affordable. A lot of it's drag and drop. If there was stuff that I'm bogged down with the edit, like someone else in our team could help us have a look over the content as well. So that was really helpful. We wanted it to be like a one pager that you could view on your mobile too. So if we were telling someone about it, they could pull it up, watch the trailer quickly before the film was even done. And then once we'd spoken to a bunch of churches, and we used it as like a grassroots platform too. That's why we decided to make it its own standalone website.
But at the same time, we did release it onto the YouTube for our organisation, and you can find it on the website of our organisation as well. So it is available in those other organic, more traditional methods, but we just also wanted to have something which people could just, Nifento, Google it, and they can find.
And we used the website. We used Google Forms for churches and people that were already connected with Iris, and some that weren't as connected could sign up and host a screening for the film. So that was also amazing, having a fairly basic, most people that are, tech savvy can learn Squarespace and get able to do a lot of this stuff. So it was really, really amazing. And another thing that helped us think about this kind of stuff and even help with kind of like, where do we even start with the film, was we did a documentary, like filmmaking course, while we were back in Australia after we left Mozambique.
After we filmed it and already did everything, we thought, maybe we should try to figure out what we're doing.
Further training and what we just embarked on.
Yeah. But it was just a very short online few steps, but it gave us enough grid to be able to then develop something.
Yeah, and the course is called The Art of Documentary, and it's by a guy called Mark Bone. We'd watched a lot of his shorter videos on YouTube, and they were very more focused on story. I mean, so much on YouTube and around our world is focused on gear, and that was one thing that we didn't have lots of.
We didn't have the luxury.
We had an old Sony A7S II that a lot of it was filmed on, and then a Canon 5D Mark IV,
and minimal lens,
mirrorless, so it's not stabilized. It's more the old school digital SLR. So it was all filmed on those two cameras.
Did we have stabilizers? No.
Not hardly anything was stabilized. So yeah, we were like, we didn't want the gear to be a limitation, and that was the same with like the website. We were just like, we know these tools work well, let's utilize what we can. And having the screenings listed was great, because we ended up having screenings all over Asia and places in Africa and a bunch in our home country of Australia and
Around
lots
America.
across the US. So it was a really great way for people that wanted to like partner with what God was doing about bringing awareness to this conflict and this issue in northern Mozambique. They could contribute and own it and host their own screening however they saw fit, which, people held prayer time before or after the event or did worship. Like, people did it however they wanted. We released like control for them to do it how they want. And that was really good. The feedback on that was great. And we realized even when we started doing like some pre-screening in our like internal people that are missionaries across the world, we visited a base in Nepal when we'd had like our first cut of the film done. We showed the missionaries there, and people even within our own movement didn't know the gravity of what was happening in Mozambique. So we realized like, hey, like when we release this, like I think if all it does is bring awareness internally for our organization, so we're all praying and knowing what's going on, that'll be a huge win. But then once it was released, we had lots of amazing feedback, and it's reached a lot of people, and yeah, it's been really, really incredible. It was much bigger than I had imagined. Just caught the vision early on, and I was slow to catch up, but I mean,
It took you a while to realize what the amount of work that it would take you as the
And I think that's the beauty of working in team, and when you're a husband and wife kind of team,
there's no moment where you're not working on it.
Yeah.
It's like morning, breakfast, dinner.
Zoom just put a thumbs down for some reason. I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah, different. No worries.
Like the husband and wife team.
Yeah, maybe we should be on that. Yeah.
And it comes with its challenges, but it's also amazing. The challenges are, for 2 years, we probably never switched off about the project. We were always talking about it, dreaming about it.
Yeah. When work and life blend together incessantly.
And it's definitely a passion project for us.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, you touched on so many things. I want to kind of backtrack and kind of more clarifying questions on them. So you mentioned churches taking it and hosting screenings, and so that was kind of on that separate website where they could sign up to host a screening. Talk a little bit about how like Iris and the churches were able to use the film.
Yeah. So between Jessica and Matt, because I was still editing and finalizing the film, they really ran with like, how about we just use a Google form and then like a spreadsheet where we collect this information. And basically they would say like what their room is, the capacity, they'd fill out some details, and then you can explain it.
Yeah, so our organization has a newsletter that goes out, and it has quite a large number of subscribers to that. So we use that as a bit of an organic platform to invite people to do a pre-screening. So we kind of went on the whole thing. It's like, this is going to be before it's released. You get a special opportunity to showcase this film. And so that kind of helped a little bit. And even after it was released, people could still do a screening, which was better than what we thought. We thought people the interest might die out and screenings might die out. But even this year, we've had some people approach us and say, hey, I think you guys should do another screening of the film in a church. And so we were quite, I guess, pleasantly surprised by how that grassroots avenue really helped with our viewers. So we had lots of different churches who responded and wrote in, and people sharing that link from the website to be able to do a screening. And all it takes is one person from that newsletter or the website to see, oh, you can do a screening. And then they approach their church. And then from their church, it could be up to anything from 200 to 2,000 people that watch the film within that session. So, and although that might not turn around for YouTube views, for us, what was more important was the exposure and the awareness. And obviously, those who wish to partner and pray, partner financially or spiritually, that was a huge benefit as well, because it got to, help the awareness of the actual campaign. So that was something that we, saw huge fruit in approaching it from that way and inviting churches to be involved.
Yeah, and letting them run it how they want to as well. Like sort of, our team was so small and we were still finishing like just the last final touches on the film, and including like some translation because we knew other countries would want to screen it and view it. So yeah, just trusting them to like do it how they want was really, really good, because that meant, you know, we didn't have to micromanage them and all the different logistics about.
And some people chose to do private screenings just in their home and their lounge room with a small group. Some people chose to do public ones at a cinema. We had some in Singapore that did it at a large cinema, and they did it their own campaigning on our behalf, which was just such a blessing. We didn't have to put in the effort. We didn't have to show up. It was them speaking on the behalf of the people in Mozambique and raising awareness and funds for them, which was such a beautiful gesture of them getting involved.
Yeah, and then once we had the confirmed screenings, we were able to list those screenings on the website, and some of them are still listed there.
Yeah, so
you see some of them we took down after the dates happened, so the ones coming up would be more relevant at the top of the list. But
so yeah, if you go to nifento.com, you can see there's a screening and navigation.
We created a package which is basically just a zip file, like an EPK, like where people could get all the information, posters and write-ups, and a downloadable link of the file in either 4K or 1080, and just all the things they would need to like host that. So we tried to make it
as empowering as possible.
And that worked really great. And some people had messages and emailed to us, but most people were able to just run with it and had frequently asked questions about how they can support or next steps to get involved. And so
some of the viewings we were able to go to in person and just help campaign and like advocate for the circumstances in Mozambique. And
it was great.
But yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I love that it seemed to be such a amazing grassroots movement that you guys had of a lot of people wanting to get involved and take initiative on their own. You also mentioned, it's definitely increased a lot of awareness for the situation with terrorism in Mozambique. You said people in your own movement weren't quite aware of the gravity of the situation sometimes. So other than that, do you know if the film brought in a lot of those funds that you were hoping for IRIS or for Mozambique, or what was like the next steps or call to action?
We know in awareness that it brought a lot more attention on it, and it also helped. We were getting quite a lot of support already to help feed internally displaced people. So basically it's the same as like a refugee, but within their own nation.
That's got nowhere to flee or run to.
So there's like close to 1 million of those in that region now, and the whole country's only like not even, I think it's around 30.
And this is just one province, one state of the country.
Yeah,
so nearly 1 million people.
A very small region, like the most rural region of the nation. So for that amount of people to be displaced and without housing, they had no means to work anymore. A lot of them farmed or fishermen or other small businesses they ran. So there was a lot of need for food distributions, and that's sort of featured in the film as well. So they were getting supported quite well, and through our crisis response type stuff we do with the IRIS, but people weren't knowing the whole picture. And this really like helped tell the stories of the people that were already faithfully partnering with us and partnering what Jesus was doing to help these people. So,
but then the need is always it's overwhelming.
The need has continued to be there, but it definitely helps tell the whole picture and really help give back to those people that had signed in to the original support before the film came out as well. That was a motivating factor for us too. It's like people have been praying for this, not knowing completely what's going on, so we're hoping we can tell the whole story. And we tried to tell the story in a way where it didn't polarize the audience. People that don't have a really strong Christian background or not Christian at all could watch it and not feel like, hey, there's all this Christianese, I don't understand this. What's this talking about? We wanted it to be broader spectrum, and some of the screenings we did that we were able to go to personally, especially one that was hosted in our hometown of Australia, over half the audience would have been non-Christian, and the normal like newspaper did a plug for the event, and lots of people, when we were missionaries, we'd come home for the summertime from Mozambique and shoot wedding photography. That's how we supported ourselves on the field, and all these people we shot their weddings rocked up to the screening those nights to sort of see what they'd sewn into, because we'd say, you know, by us being your wedding photographers, this helps us doing this work with this NGO. And so it was really beautiful for it all to come like full circle. And it was quite emotional in our hometown, the screenings those nights, seeing all these people. And a lot of people were really like taken back by how serious the conflict was. Like I remember people saying, we never knew how bad it was where you were. Like, we're so sorry. Like, we
It's an
didn't
abstract concept.
understand. So
Yeah, I think terror, war,
it is very abstract.
it's a very abstract concept.
So
Yeah. I love that. I love the story of people whose weddings you guys had filmed coming to show up to see what they supported. I think that's amazing. And that kind of brings me to the next question in terms of, did you guys try to get this out into other audiences besides just people who know and already maybe supporting Iris or the cause in Mozambique? Or was that also kind of an organic thing that happened based on the screenings that were like did you guys submit to film festivals or try to reach broader audiences besides the current one you already have?
So I had a huge interest in submitting it to film festivals. However, we haven't done it, and it's something that's still I'm curious about. So maybe if you do a podcast about that, you can educate and inform us on how to do that.
Definitely.
But yeah, that's something that we would like to explore more as we're growing too in doing more longer length films. I think it's definitely the other organic avenue, how it unraveled, and just through relationships with people that we've had. And we also had some newspapers that had done some reports, and then we had some Christian different channels, wasn't it, like different TV like channels. We had some different articles that were released online too about Nifento. It gave it some awareness as well. But yeah, so it definitely was more of it just fell into place, and lack of our wisdom and experience perhaps in the release, because that's one thing we learned so much about the filmmaking. We had more skill sets when it came to the directing and the filming and the quality of the film. But then to release a film is a complete different ball game. So we learn in that process about the strategic planning and something that would still like to grow more for a film like that, which had a bit more of an independence base, not just like on our organization's platform. So
and then a Christian distributor reached out to us as well, like probably about 5 months, 6 months after the film was released, and wanted to do some distribution with us too, like to make some physical copies of the film. So like a different demographic, like an older audience that still, you know, consumes media like that. So we did an agreement with them because we thought, you know, any way that this film can get out more, like let's just do it. So that's made it available in places like Walmart and Amazon and
and we did translate the film into many different languages. So I think it's in Portuguese, it's in Spanish, it's in French, I think it's in Chinese, it's obviously in English. So we tried to make it available and get it translated so it could be viewable.
And the screening, like the host of screenings things, really helped with that, because it identified which like regions and languages needed.
Yeah, so we had places in like Tokyo and Brazil.
So we got Japanese too.
So Japanese as well. So yeah, we had lots of different locations. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Oftentimes, you know, making something and getting eyes on that thing are two totally different experiences and involve different skills. So I love that you guys kind of were willing to learn and figure it out as you went along.
Yeah.
But this is going to be such a small nitpicky thing. When you guys announced it and you released the trailer, I got the email blast about it. And the thing that I really noticed that got my attention was actually the GIF of the different images with the name of the film in front of it. And so it was the name of the film and then the GIF of different images behind it. And that to me was like such a small touch, but really showed kind of like the quality and the intent and the like attention to detail that had been put behind this and the release, that I was like, wow, these people know what they're doing, or like are trying to like actually
Got you.
best they can. So whose idea was that, and how did that?
Yeah, you looked at the old school gift.
Yes.
That's pretty funny.
We're pretending to know what we're doing. That's for sure.
I
Yeah,
loved it.
James had that concept with the GIF.
Yeah. So it was just to like have something that non-static in an email newsletter. You know, they can sometimes be very text heavy. So just wanted to do something that made it just pop a little bit more.
Maybe we need to do that more then.
Yeah.
I definitely.
We've followed that suit. We've been doing a docu-series highlighting different locations we have around the world, and each time we release a new episode of that series, we've continued with the GIF format because
I think it's great because it definitely elevates it and shows people like
Mhm.
this is intentional, high quality media. You know.
Yeah.
So I love that. So
thanks,
after
man.
doing this film and this longer project, would you recommend to other organizations to do longer form documentaries, or what's your take or advice there?
My advice would be to explore what your needs are within your organization, and if it's going to serve both those needs and your organization's vision and goal and purpose, then it's definitely something to invest into. For us too, like I'm kind of like, I don't know if it's because I was a missionary for like 7 or 8 years, and I've always having like, you know, the whole MacGyver, like, you know, you've got a few tools, what can you create with what you have, and really trying to create a great project, what looks like 100,000, but really, I don't know, how much do you think we spent on Nifento?
With licensing, like for music and then translation, I think it got to like $6,000 all up.
$6,000. So, which is a very under budget kind of film.
Yeah,
like
for
even
a feature film, that's not that much
like,
at all.
you know, we're like, this is me and him. So we
Not
volunteer.
much for a car.
It's not much for a
Yeah.
vehicle. So I'm kind of very passionate about not being too troubled about what you don't have. But if you've got the vision, if you've got the message, and you feel like that it's going to benefit your cause. And for us, it was very much faith driven. So we were looking at verses which talked about, you know, not by our might, not by our strength, but by God's Spirit. And so things like that really motivated and encouraged us that we didn't have to have it all together before we went out with this purpose and this goal, but we could use it as a learning opportunity too, to develop our skills, to problem shoot some things, and to figure out what we could make and what we could do with what we had. So I definitely would encourage anyone who has even that, you know, that creative drive to tell stories and to go out there and to release them and to bring it. Like for us, it was definitely about giving people a voice and empowering people who felt like they were ignored for whatever reason it may have been. But in Mozambique, it was all these victims who just felt like no one was there to help them. And we wanted to empower them, giving them that voice to be able to speak up about the injustices, what was happening in that nation. So if you have the drive and that creative vision to tell a story, don't let anything restrict you. And just problem shoot and reevaluate, be teachable, be correctable. I'm willing to learn from your mistakes, but I'm a dreamer. We can do this no matter what. And for me, when I look at Nifento, I'm also very much a perfectionist, and so is James in a lot of aspects. Maybe I'm a bit harsher, but I'll look at it and still see things that I'm like, okay, we could have done that better. We could have done that better.
Yeah.
Could have done that better. So at the same time, giving yourself grace, but also learning from your past experiences. So
yeah, you've got to start somewhere.
Yeah, you've got to start somewhere. So don't be too discouraged. You need to sometimes just go out and take that step of faith first before you have all your ducks in a line, so to speak. You don't have to have everything looking like the perfect camera, the perfect equipment, perfect team. It's just...
And there's a bunch of films that inspired us too, which helped too, like being examples.
There is one film that hugely inspired us because we were in a war zone. Like I said, we had a child with us. I was pregnant in a war zone, and we were asked to leave the base to go and film some help, do more media outside in this area that wasn't as safe. And at first we didn't feel any peace about doing that. And then we watched this film called Free Burma Rangers, which I highly recommend.
It
it's one of my favorite films, and that ministered to us. It encouraged us,
Very
and
convicting.
it's about people in Burma, and it also includes people who are making films within that documentary too. Like they're using
puts a high like honor and purpose on like media.
Media and the purpose of media. So that encouraged us. And as soon as we watched that, we both just felt immediately in our spirits that we were meant to leave the safety of our foundations, our base, and go out into the village to film this project. So yeah, be inspired.
Yeah. And I know that a lot of orgs have probably already done a lot of different shorter videos or testimonial videos and stuff like that. And so how much of Nifento was stuff that you guys had already essentially shot and repurposed for the purposes of the film versus you going out to capture content specifically for the film? So talk about like what you could have already had in the backlog or repurposed to be able to tell the story.
I'm trying to think. So we had been there for since 2016. We had been in Mozambique, and 2020 is when we filmed it. And the war had kind of broken out in 2017, I think. Would you say that's accurate when the first terrorist attack was? 2017. So from 2017 onwards to 2020, we had been capturing things for other projects, not with the intention to do this film, but we did have a good library of B-roll.
We were just archiving, documenting what was happening.
Yeah, but in saying that too, I think really it was only things from 2019 and 2020. The B-roll is what we would have probably used from out those 2 years, so to speak.
Yeah, it would have been maybe some older footage that just showed like geographically a place or
some drone footage perhaps like, that we had.
But most of it, I would say, like with intentionality, like including B-roll, like 60 to 70% of it was like what was shot in that with the intentions of like we're going to try to make this into something.
Yeah,
because a lot of it was interviews with the internally displaced people's interviews with Heidi, interviews with Will, and that was all like, yeah, we're going to make this into something now. So there's intentionality, but living there on the ground for a long period of time meant we had a lot of B-roll to pull on that was relevant to what was being spoken in the interview. So that was a huge advantage. That came from various different types of iterations of a different camera or, and so there's that challenge, like trying to make it all match and all the technical. Some of it's not 4K, a lot of it was. So, processing that kind of stuff.
Some of it was before we had like monopods or tripods. So it's like handheld and just like, towards 2016, it was a bit more shaky.
Yeah.
And then you can also see our progression as filmmakers and just documenting events that we get better and better as those dates go on.
Yeah, we just learned so much in the process. And like I mentioned before, that course we did made us like, not so much on the technical side, but more really on the storytelling side. And that's an
encouragement.
Yeah, that was the
encouragement.
That was the advantage. There was like just we already sort of knew that, but having like the encouragement, like Jess said, that someone reiterating that story and concept is king over the technical stuff. You can get bogged down. Where, this shot's a bit shaky. That's the great thing about Free Burma Rage is there's so much stuff filmed in the moment that's shaky and it's technically not this, but like it is so powerful because it
enhances the story, and the story is so captivating that any of those little things that a perfectionist might just try to pull up, you just disregard because of the storytelling.
So it was a lot of like dying to your old ways during the process. To when you're producing a 3-minute video, you're like, every B-roll has to be perfect, and every transition, every cut, you're thinking about it. So
to captivate the audience for that 3 minutes, to keep them engaged.
The way social media is now, like you're so many people that are going to be listening to this podcast that are doing this work. It's like you've got a 30-second reel or a 60-second little short video. Like the beauty of being able to do a longer form thing is let it breathe, an artistic shot stay on frame for 10 seconds. Like, just all this kind of stuff was really
liberating.
Yeah, so nice to be able to do that kind of stuff and let it breathe. And it's like the difference between an article in a newspaper or a magazine compared to a novel. Like, it is starkly different the way that you approach things and let the stories be told. So it's very cool.
Totally. Yeah. Footage can be old or shaky, but as long as it supports the story, it doesn't quite matter the tools that you have, just if it's telling a good story that's powerful and impactful. So
Yeah,
we're still quite like it has to be a really good piece of shaky film for me to still include it, because I'm like the perfectionist. He's like, oh,
we did go back and like a missionary from years ago, like over 20 years ago, shot some stuff on like DV tape, and we did go back and include some of that to show just sort of like the history of Roland flying the plane, Haiti and Maputo in the south of Mozambique. So yeah, it's like that was one of the things we realized too with the documenting of the film, is like we're documenting what God's doing. This is like a time capsule, and this is going to be important for a lot of people, like not even just ourselves, but people that have, people we serve with their kids 30 years from now might want to look at this stuff and be like, hey, like I was a baby there. And,
well, this is what my parents gave their lives towards, like, and served and worked towards. And
so just for us and for other people that do this work, be encouraged that it's got multifaceted kind of like purposes.
Yeah, definitely. Well, hey, I kind of want to pivot from this specific film to a broader media talk, because you guys are a core members of your media team for your organization. So I know that the org also does or has done historically some podcasts, especially on YouTube, but also on other channels. And so I wanted you guys to talk a little bit about that, as specifically the Room podcast that you have with the CEO of the organization. So maybe like a little bit about that, how that came about, what benefits or results you've seen from that as well.
Yeah. So did you want to talk?
No.
Sorry.
I think when we were on the ground serving these needs as missionaries and filmmakers, we would call ourselves like media missionaries. We had two guys that were in, at the time it was in California where our headquarters were, who were also doing media, and they birthed Green Room with our CEO. And so that's where it had originally came from. It was kind of like a new podcast off an older one we had done, which was the one Nathan and Sarah.
After Hours.
After Hours.
After Hours.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was kind of like a rebirth of that. And more and more that Green Room has just escalated and grown. But James can give you more information about it, where it's at.
Yeah, well, we saw like historically the massive value like After Hours had, especially in its like conception, like Heidi and Roland being able to share more of their background and their story, and people just to get to see a different side of their personality. Because when someone's preaching, it's like, they're sharing very differently than they would be like conversational. So, and even when they were like pioneering that podcast, there was less of that kind of Christian content around. So, when the guys wanted to do the Green Room, Will's like intention was like, I'm having all these great conversations when I travel around, whether it's mission spaces or conferences I'm speaking at, having these great conversations with people in passing or in green rooms. And that's kind of where the title came from, was like these discussions around life and theology. And he just wanted to recreate those conversations in front of a camera. So that was its origin and conception, but it's birthed to there where we're like, hey, like this thing's got momentum. How can we highlight more what Iris is doing and show people our amazing people we have all around the world doing missions and serving? How can we tell their stories in this conversation format too? And so, it's growing and it's really exciting, and it's one of our like strongest forward facing things we have now. So we're just trying to steward that and really highlight, like, our movement is so much about the amazing people we have serving Jesus. And so we just want to highlight them, because a lot of the time they're definitely people that aren't going to self-promote.
No.
They're definitely not people going to be like, hey, I've got this testimony to share. As much as they want to testify about Jesus, they don't want to make it about them.
So we have approximately, it would be 70 bases or locations all around the world. So from those locations, a lot of these people are invisible. They just do it without any recognition, and they love what they do, but they're very, they're very humble people. So we wanted to testify about what God is doing.
We're like pushing people into the chairs.
Yeah, we're just like, this is actually encouraging the body of Christ needs to hear these miracles. They need to hear what it looks like to be the hands and feet of Jesus and actually shine in darkness and to be the light. And there's nothing more encouraging than hearing the stories firsthand from people who have lived it. And you can hear a sermon from someone who's teaching on something and it's a theory on how to live, but that's different to someone who has lived it and that's something that they're embodied and actually gone through and endured and actually come through and can speak through about it from experience. So
and the other side of it is like people that Will's ran with for years and their ministry friends. So he likes to just get them on and share their hearts and stuff because there's so much crossover.
Yeah, influential leaders in the Christian world. So
it's been really great. But it's a very organic. Like we don't sit down and plan out all the episodes. It's kind of like who's in town, who can we get on, and that's kind of the way it'll keep going, I reckon. So
we're trying to be a bit more intentional, but there's only so much that you can plan. Sometimes you just need to grab opportunities when they arise.
So.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know about the origin of the name, so I think that's really cool. And I like that you said it's one of the more forward-facing aspects of the media that you guys do. So like, would the audience be kind of people in your circles who know and love the organization and Iris, or is it kind of more for a broader audience or outreach in that sense?
Well, I think originally there wasn't like Will's conception of it wasn't like thinking exactly like who the demographic is that we're trying to reach. It was more just like, there's so much gold here, let's just get it out, and create something where we're not like, this is the program we do, this is like a situation, like pray for us or support us. It was something where we can actually feed people spiritually too. And that's always something that's been a focus for all of media and all of Iris. Like, we're doing this work, we are an NGO, we do have needs on these grounds, but we also want to like impart what God's done in us to other people too. Like that has to be it. So I think that was kind of the motivation. And
definitely.
Yeah, I love that. Sometimes that's a very valuable approach too, is not necessarily like knowing where you're targeting from the outset, but kind of wanting to provide value because you were edified or encouraged by it and you want to share that with others, and then kind of seeing where it goes from there.
And we've had a lot of recent feedback where people are like, we love these stories of missionaries. It reminds us of After Hours. So we're trying to be intentional with that too and find a good balance. Like, how can we get more missionaries on? Because a lot of people historically subscribe to our channel for that type of content. So they're really excited. That's going to be it's reignited that type of content for them to consume too. So yeah, we're trying to be mindful of that as much as we can too. So.
Nice. That's awesome. So with this being another media initiative that you guys have done in your organization, is this something that you found super beneficial and might recommend for other organizations or?
Oh, definitely. I think when we were talking about films is like, that would be the only thing that, NGOs could probably shy away from is, knowing just a little bit about your background and what your world is in, the post-production side. Is that it can blow out, the time that's spent on projects or that kind of stuff. And people want to see results. They want to see projects finished.
Quick turnarounds.
And that's the beauty of a podcast. They are something, whether you use a live editor, live switcher, or, the advancements of text-based editing in DaVinci and Premiere. We use a lot of that text-based editing now because you see it broken down into paragraphs, so you can edit things a lot quicker. So I definitely think it's something
more achievable,
especially
if it feels a bit intimidating to do a full-length film.
Yeah.
If you want to start somewhere, a podcast is something that I feel like even if you're learning in film, a bit more amateur or whatsoever, it's achievable.
It's
safer. Yeah,
for sure.
To grow and to
I
develop
definitely
those skills.
encourage people, and it's like it's not just the episode; it's like little bits sound bites you can grab to post as reels or YouTube Shorts or little bits of the episode on Facebook. Like it has multiple, and that's what we've been doing with it as well. So
yeah, amazing. I know that Iris is a little bit unique in that the founders are big figureheads and very well known. Do you feel that most people who come across Iris as an organization have heard about it because of Heidi or by word of mouth, or would you say that it's largely because of the media you guys put out there, or like how would you say people find your organization?
It's interesting because sometimes like a Heidi Baker and Roland Baker, they do have a great platform on their own. They're quite well known. They're really well known in that Christian world. And so sometimes when you say that you work for Iris Global or we do stuff with Iris Global, people don't associate Heidi Baker and Iris Global. So it's something that we've been able to slowly bridge the gap that Iris Global is Heidi Baker and Roland Baker's original ministry. And it's something that we're still growing and problem shooting and developing, I guess, methods to bridge that. And if it is the same too with Green Room. Some people have heard of Green Room and they don't associate that with Iris. But
Will's been recognised as the Green Room guy, not CEO.
Not a CEO of Iris. So we really want to help take advantage of, I guess, the influence that both those two platforms, whether it's Heidi's influence or Will's Green Room, and bring that into the favor to bless and also help the mission and the missionaries and the work that they do on the ground in all these different nations. So it's a fine balance. And because at one point you just like any awareness is good awareness, but trying to also, when you've got such a broad organization, which is international, and you're trying to also create these other little projects to bridge those kind of gaps. Yeah, it's something that we have to keep in our mind. But and we've been able to slowly, people who know Heidi have definitely brought in awareness to our films, especially when she's featured in them and so forth. But I don't know if that answers your question, but
definitely, even historically, like times when the film that you were involved in as well, like Compelled by Love or books that Heidi had put out, we saw like spikes in, people coming to the school. Like media definitely drives like
attendance.
Attendance and people wanting to get involved and come visit locations, all that kind of stuff. There's a tangible flow on that you see with that kind of stuff for sure.
Totally. It's really interesting that there can be a disconnect between people like Heidi or Will and the organization, and you guys are saying you're trying to kind of bridge that gap. Yeah. Do you it's okay if not, but do you have any like practical examples of how you guys might go about that, such as like
as simple as doing a post that might be more Iris centric,
branded,
doing a collaborative post on Instagram with Heidi's page and Iris. Things as simple as that. They'll see the two names, they'll see like the Iris logo, maybe on, another person who's ministering with Heidi's shirt. It's just like very simple visual cues and things like that we've tried to do.
So sometimes even on YouTube, you could have like a little logo of your organization down in the bottom corner, which is just like a channel kind of brand. You could have that on the bottom of that.
We do that.
So we do that with our YouTube with the Iris logo. So little things like that, and just being aware of those gaps that happen organically. Like, it's not something that has been intentional, but it's just kind of bridged a little bit at a time. So we're just, just coming in to like help.
Even before our time, and probably some of the stuff you were involved in shooting when you visited Mozambique in the past, we've always tried to have something for Heidi to show at conferences where she speaks, whether she's representing Iris or just representing herself as a speaker. She can show something, so saying like, this is, as an organization, this is where we minister and this is what it looks like, and we're Iris Global, and like, so she's really helped.
Both Heidi and Will are very selfless, so they're always like bringing awareness to the mission of Iris Global. So with the things that they approach and say and do, it is always going to be pointing back to Jesus in the ministry of what we are. They're not out there to create their own brand and their own name. So that's obviously having their heart so devoted to God and the purpose of the organization. It just reflects through their interactions with social media and different platforms of communication, whether it's at conferences or so forth.
Yeah, that's great. I love that intent, and that's great practical advice. Are there ways that you guys try to build trust with your audiences or donors through your media? If you have any kind of either broad overview or very tangible, practical ways.
I know there's something Jess would want to touch on the approach on how to get media content. So I'll just tackle the first part and then let her do that.
I wonder what you think I'm going to say. Like,
no, just the sensitivity of capturing things.
Oh, yeah.
Jess is going to bring heart and wants to help impart that to other people that want to get into this type line of work. But yeah, I think with us, like the type of things we say and making sure there's a balance in what we're posting, we don't want to be posting everything that's like, help us do what we do. You know, we obviously want people to get involved so they can help us do what we can do, but we also want to feed people. And I talked about that before. It's like sharing devotionals, like Heidi and Roland have like amazing devotional books. There's one right here. And, you know, we'll give them to people for free because we want people to just hear about what God's done and how it will inspire them to, you know, give their life away to go do missions as well. So a lot of the posts we'll do, if we're doing, we average like on Instagram and Facebook, like doing minimum 3 posts a week. That's just something we want to do to see consistency, to see the message going out. And at least one of those posts will be a devotional, and it'll show an image that's sort of related to that devotional, that story, but it's helping people read something that encourages them with no real like call to action or hard ask. Their call to action is like, how do you want to respond to Jesus? So that's really something we try to focus on.
We don't ask for money.
And our theology with our organizations, we don't outright ask for money.
Yeah. So it's always an encouragement to equip the body of Christ to be able to get involved and to partner. But that can look like many different things. That can look like prayer. That can look like support financially. It can also look like coming and visiting a base. That could look like attending one of our schools. So our motivation isn't and has never been, we want your money, we want your money. So we kind of have a really beautiful principles and theologies through our IRS family that, you know, God, he supplies our needs, that we can trust in him. So we can make aware what's happening and we can ask for prayer, but we're not going to ever approach someone and say, hey, we need this money, do this. That makes sense. So it's a balance.
It's no yoke or judgment we put on anyone else.
No, not at all.
It's a personal conviction from the ministry of our founders. And that's just the way we approach things.
Yeah.
And God's been faithful to that. Like he's provided, and he never hasn't in the history of their ministry, well before we were even involved with it. So it is amazing to see how God moves through that. But another thing, like I think you kind of touch on, is like how we're capturing the footage.
Yeah.
Like how we approach that.
So like I've said, was it 8 years? 8 years we volunteered for Iris Global. So for us to want to give our lives into that kind of aspect, we definitely want to be like what we're giving ourselves to. We want to believe in it. So we know that without a doubt, we've seen on the ground, we know where the food is going, we know where the money is going. We've been able to actually be the hands and feet of the organization to see where those resources are meeting. And that's helped us a lot to have that faith in what we're doing and putting the extra effort and the extra yard, because integrity wise, it's just like, yep, I believe in this cause. I know that we're actually saying what we and preaching, you know, doing what we preach, so to speak. So that really, really helps when you personally have those, I guess, convictions and those things met inside yourself. And then it gives you that confidence then with how you approach media to be able to be, you know, I'm being transparent because I know this inside out and I've seen how it's ran and it's functioned. And so I know the heart and the core of everything that we do is truthful and honest and pure and heart. And for me, when it comes to filming, like I've written a whole like a curriculum thing to teach, because one day I'd love to really train and release other media missionaries, but approach it not from the way that we may secularly always approach media. I would love to be able to do something where we're meeting the needs of media, but we're being very low and slow, so to speak, and not being paparazzi on the ground and not exploiting someone for a story. And sometimes, like, what we would say is when you go into a base, like, don't even pick up a camera. Like, when you go into a location, don't even pick up a camera for the first few days, or like very if you have to film the minimal for the first few days and just build relationship and just build trust and actually listen to the story of the people and get to connect with their hearts. Because if you want to portray something to the world, you really first need to connect one-on-one with the person in front of you. And if you're just trying to exploit people get so like, yeah, if I wonder how it would feel for me to be in front of a camera telling someone, a stranger, all about my horrible circumstances and how uncomfortable I would be. So it's good for us to have empathy and reflect. If I was in their circumstance, how would I feel? Would I really want, like, what is appropriate to film? What isn't appropriate to film? There was so much in Nifento that we could have filmed. Some stories that would have got the clickbait, some stories that would have got the real, I guess, wow factor, so to speak, when it came to like tragedy and just horrendous things that the ISIS had done that would really shock people and could get clickbait and views. And we chose not to include them because we didn't want to give that much attention to the enemy. We didn't want to get that much attention to the darkness. We want to be honest, and it was a struggle of knowing how much to actually include what was happening, but then also not to have such a message of despair as an overarching like message.
We definitely, as a movement, lean more on like the positive and the testimony about what God's doing.
Because
so Nifento was a stretch for us to be like, because the reality is, it's like even what comes across in the film, the situation's way more serious. Like, so it was a balance, and we were definitely torn at times.
Because when people are like exploited and they see the photos of the poor children with the hungry, starving skeletal bodies, like
flies are in there.
And, you know, you're looking at that. But a lot of the times when someone sees that from the Western world or another country or a different economic background, they're just not connecting because they feel guilty. They're not actually understanding, and they've become desensitized, and the concept is really abstract. So, so that's something that we try to keep in our mind. It's a different, huge topic within itself.
But what you mentioned about, like, you know, having trust from people, you know, engaging with the content we're doing, we try to, like Jess was saying, build trust with the people that are being in the pictures and video, you know, and hopefully that translates back to that there's not this, like, exploitation or in any way or any, you know, feeling of like, oh, that person's just being shown because it's going to get a reaction, like Jess was saying. So, I think that's our motivation. If it all starts there, it's a lot easier to continue to build trust with people that support us and, you know, run with us.
I love that. Like, when you start at the root, then hopefully the end result will kind of reflect those early intentions from the onset. Iris, in my opinion, has often done a great job of reaching younger audiences. I see a lot of young adults who are very interested and passionate about the work that Iris is doing. Was this something that you guys kind of like set across to do early on, or like talk about how you tend to reach younger generations? And was that like an intentional thing on your part, or did it just kind of happen?
I think a lot of these things are the grace of God.
Yeah, I actually feel really complimented that you say that, because we've been reflecting and thinking that perhaps we need to be targeting more to the younger audience, and have we Gen Z is the areas that we need to try to make the media more relevant to that audience. And so I'm so happy that you feel that way. But
just based on who is your organization.
There's schools in the past, definitely.
I don't know, you can try to answer.
No, I think like when we look at demographics that are growing across like our social media and all that kind of stuff, to put it back to like statistics, but it's a way to gauge, well, who is engaging with us. Our strongest like age demographic across YouTube and Instagram is the 24 to like 35 age bracket, which I used to think maybe it would be either younger or much older because of just like the demographic that Heidi and Roland are and the people that follow them. So it depends on the type of people we have. Like, for instance, we did a green room with a prophetic guy, Larry Randolph, that used to do a lot of more itinerant stuff with Randy Clark and a lot of the guys from like the Toronto Blessing stuff from the 90s. So we saw a huge spike in the demographic from like 50 plus on his episode. So with all this stuff, we're trying to like make it relevant for all demographics, but definitely, with missions, there's different, like a lot of what we do is trying to encourage people to get involved with missions. That's our mission, is that the Great Commission. So younger people, they're either not going to college yet, they're having a break year. It's an opportunity for them to go do a harvest school, a mission school that we've had for years. So that's been like an opportunity for them. But then also we've been realizing, and even ourselves, like doing missions is like a lot of base leaders that we have, like location leaders, and people that have like been more long-term on the field, have been people that were in that demographic. That's our strongest online too. They're already married, or they already have like a kid, and then they commit to like being on the field, or they're like married and then about to have children and they stay. So getting people into schools historically has been a lot of young people, but people that have had longevity in the mission field has actually been people that were, in their 20s to 30s, and then were able to stay. And without discrediting, there's been people that have been retired that have finished up, their full-time work and continue doing part-time and then come and serve on the ministry. There's been some people that have done that too. That's been really amazing. So we try to like keep it as open, but obviously identifying areas that sort of translates into people wanting to do the work. So
and
that's really what we're trying.
And that's not your generic business strategy.
No.
The business strategy would be find your targeted audience, focus on that, and just really
hone in on that.
But for instance, we don't have a business strategy. We have a Jesus strategy. So for us, it's like all the world, all the age groups, everyone is...
everyone brings something different.
Yeah, and also everybody we want to encourage, everyone we want to empower, everyone we want them to know the love of Jesus and who they are in
And you see that with the missions work we used to do when we lived in Mozambique. It's like an older couple can be like the father figures for the missionaries that have left their home countries and now they've got no family around them. And then they also can be father figures to the children that might be living in a children's center, or the children that are in the community coming to church. Like, every demographic has something to bring that the other one can't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same with like the youth. Like, they can bring a fire and a zeal and a passion that, some of us other guys that, don't have because our bodies don't work as well as they used to. Just things like that. Like, it's so I don't know. I don't think we really try to hone in on a specific demographic, but we've identified those ones and definitely try to provide something for all different ones where we can. Yeah.
I love that Jesus strategy and emphasizing that as the foundation. Cool. Well, what's next for you guys? Do you have any new films, new initiatives, anything coming down the pipe that people can be excited about?
Well, since Nifento, we filmed some of them before Nifento and then some of them afterwards. It's this sort of documentary series. We used to go and visit bases, and I know you were involved with some trips to Mozambique with Nathan and Sarah, and it was kind of like, we need to capture what's going on, so we create a few like small update videos that you were involved with as well. But we thought, like, we trialed out this thing when we went to Brazil, wasn't it? That we, if we're going to go there and we need photos, we need B-roll, like maybe like a documentary, if we interview some people and do all this stuff, it might be a better format of getting everything we need, but then we also come back with a larger project. So that was a way that we sort of approached doing some trips, and that's turned into like a documentary series that we've done.
Mm-hmm. And this is Iris.
Jessica heads up all like the story structure and all that side of the project.
Yeah.
And
very passionate about it.
So these are kind of longer videos about the base that you guys are releasing every so often?
Yeah, we're trying to release it like one quarterly because they're a little bit more time involved. So.
Yeah. So then once, we have to try to like resource where our team's attention can go, because we do have so much going on with such a small team. So my desire would be that we could do more of them, but obviously you need to work within those natural boundaries. So our goal is to try to at least do 3 to 4 a year minimum, but and just see how things grow, because it obviously is traveling to a whole location and there's a bit more expenses involved. Things have changed from our $8,000 Nifento film. So when we lived in Mozambique, that was easier, but getting to these different locations a little bit more when it comes to our budget and just needing to be good stewards of what we have. But I'm extremely passionate about Mrs. Iris as a series because it gives a insight to what it looks like to be a missionary, to be on the ground in one of these countries that are of need, and what ministry is and how you can be Jesus's hands and feet practically. And we don't have many other avenues that show you that visually, and you're experiencing a day-to-day in
more sensory involvement.
Yeah.
The podcast is sort of like talking about a video game.
Yeah.
And then like the documentary series is like you're getting to play it.
You're getting
like
to play a video game.
It's like you're immersed in it. You know, like one of the last ones we put out was on the guys in Nepal. And like it starts with the guy driving around the streets of Nepal and he's like old truck and him just talking about how he sees Jesus sees this place.
And he's got cows on the road in the background.
Yeah.
It's just like you can see that it takes away that abstract concept that we were talking about, and it gives you that painted picture and experience of what missions look like, but also what it looks like to love in a broken and challenging lifestyle.
And you get to like see what these people are like understand like their character and, you know, what value systems they uphold and the way that their day-to-day life looks. And,
originally the first episodes were a little bit more, I guess, less story and more commercial. Like we were thinking, this would just be a great awareness video to promote the base. And then as we've kind of got each episode in, it's become more of like confident to share stories. And so as we develop this series, it will take a lot of developing as we grow and the series grows. We're going to be fine-tuning how we can do that better and well. And some of the challenges that we had was that we filmed a few episodes in Brazil and then we filmed more since, which was at Alice Springs base and then one in Australia. And then we filmed one in Nepal, the Kathmandu of our base there with base leaders Joel and Tammy. And for me, I'm like, this one here in Kathmandu, that's how I want to envision and replica our other ones. But then we still have to release the other ones we did in Brazil, which were our first kind of ones, what aren't as good quality, what aren't as good storytelling. And so it's kind of like, you know, as you're growing and growing things, they're releasing things. It's just a minor challenge, but, you know, something to to get you thinking.
And then another small series we're sort of rebooting. We started it being more like a little like small teaching series from missionaries called Field Journal, but we're like revamping that to be more testimony based because we sort of identify like as a movement, what's our point of difference is our missionaries' testimonies, like what they've seen God do. So we're trying to like make them like 3 minutes. So they're like a shorter form thing on YouTube because a lot of our stuff on YouTube now is longer form. So something smaller to digest, but also can be added as like a reel or a video on Facebook. So they're the two things that we're trying to build upon, as well as obviously Green Room.
And then we have other projects, which is just awareness for different ministries, like programs. The university that James went and filmed some awareness campaigns.
Yeah, and our child sponsorships.
And a child sponsorship.
That we're trying to do more for them and highlight what God's doing through that as well. So
a lot going on. Probably that pile's big.
No, it sounds like it. That's amazing. And I love your guys' adaptability and flexibility to kind of like figure things out as you go along. You'll start something and then kind of, like you said with this doc series, kind of like each episode gets better and you kind of hone and you learn and you figure out more of systems and routines as you go along. So I love just that mindset that you guys have and the approach.
Heidi definitely showed us how to be adaptable and flexible.
Yeah,
she taught us a lot in that regard, which was awesome.
I think Mozambique taught us how to be adaptable and flexible.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm sure.
You can't be rigid in your plans. You gotta go with the flow.
Well, is there any last thing, any last advice, thoughts, wisdom, things you've been learning that you might want to leave with other leaders involved with media inside of nonprofits before we wrap up?
I think just be encouraged that the work that you're doing within non-profit organizations, that it has an eternal value. That it's something that is a selfless role, but also has so much reward.
Mm.
So just continue what you're doing. You're doing a great job, even on the good days and the bad days. Like, if you don't quit, you win. So
Yeah. And look back at like what you were doing a couple of years ago and just
be encouraged.
see the tangible growth, because it's always there. You can lose sight of how much you're like growing and getting better
Yeah.
with creative work. So be encouraged by your own portfolio, because it definitely is there.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys so much, and I really appreciate your time.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thanks,
Thank
man.
you.
See you guys.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to our channels for future content. It really helps us out. This podcast is brought to you by Travelite Studios. Travelite is a full-service film production company that specializes in documentary and promotional videos for your nonprofit. We are a multicultural team of award-winning creatives with a passion to help organizations grow their reach. We can be your media team or work alongside your media team to deliver captivating content that energizes your audience. Travelite takes the time to truly get to know you and your needs and includes extra tools to help make your videos be the most powerful they can be. Go to travelitestudios.com right now to plan a project and have your story and solutions presented to viewers in a beautifully compelling way. That's travelitestudios.com.